Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're dissecting a huge corporate transformation, really one of the biggest of the last decade. We're talking about Royal Philips, a company, famous for light bulbs, consumer electronics, and how it spent 10 years completely rewiring itself to become a pure-play medical technology giant.
It's a fascinating story.
And our sources track this entire pivot with one thing right at the core: the Philips HealthSuite digital platform, or HSDP. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going to unpack what HSDP actually is, not just the tech, but the strategy behind it. We'll look at how it went from a concept to a medical-grade platform, what it offers, and how some really staggering results from early trials just completely changed Philips' entire business model.
It's really a textbook case of a legacy company seeing that the ground was shifting under its feet. You have to remember, around 2014, Philips was facing just immense pressure. Healthcare costs they were skyrocketing globally. You had aging populations, a huge surge in chronic diseases, and the old model of just selling a big, expensive box, a physical device. Every few years, that was becoming totally unsustainable for hospitals.
They couldn't afford it anymore.
Right. And Philips realized the real value wasn't just in the hardware, it was in the data that hardware generated. The late Jerome Tass, he had this vision of connecting everything, devices, systems, and most importantly, people across what he called the entire health continuum.
The health continuum. So that's not just in the hospital.
No, exactly. It's everything from healthy living and prevention all the way through diagnosis, treatment, and then right back into care at home. And the only way to link all of that seamlessly was, a single, secure, universal platform.
And that's the genesis of HSDP, unveiled back in June 2014. What I find fascinating is the internal mandate they issued. They said they were no longer going to build software that just supported their devices. Instead, they declared they had to build devices around the software instead of the reverse.
Which is a monumental shift.
It's huge for a hardware company. What did that actually mean on the engineering floor? Were they suddenly designing MRI machines differently because of this?
It meant two huge things. First, interoperability had to be baked in from the absolute beginning. Every single new product, whether it was a little consumer wearable or a massive hospital scanner, it had to speak the same language. It had to seamlessly feed data into this one platform.
Okay, so a common language for everything.
And second, it meant embracing an open architecture. HSDP was designed to be an open, cloud-based platform. And the key was it could host not just Philips' own apps, but applications from third parties, too.
But handling that much sensitive medical data and doing it globally, that's a massive infrastructure challenge.
Oh, absolutely. And they knew not to try and build that themselves. They initially partnered with Salesforce, but very quickly they cemented a major collaboration with Amazon Web Services, with AWS.
And that wasn't just a tech decision.
No, it was deeply strategic. Using AWS gave them global scale, it gave them reliability, and crucially, it ensured they met all these incredibly strict international privacy and security standards. We're talking HIPAA compliance in the US and GDPR alignment in the EU. The security had to be, medical grade from day one.
And to prove that medical grade capability, they launched their first applications right away: eCare Coordinator and eCare Companion. These were remote monitoring tools, part of their hospital-to-home program, designed to manage chronically ill patients outside of the clinic.
And this is where the whole thing gets real. This is where technical capability meets regulatory credibility. Because you remember those earlier consumer health platforms like Google Health or Microsoft Health Vault? They mostly failed to get real clinical adoption.
Right, doctors just didn't trust them.
Exactly. Philips knew they had to be different. They treated HSDP not as a consumer gadget, but as a clinical tool.
Which meant getting some kind of official approval.
It meant getting the official stamp of approval. A massive, massive early win was securing FDA 510K clearance for those first apps in October 2014.
So for anyone listening who isn't deep in medtech, what does 510K clearance mean for software?
It means the FDA has determined that the software platform and the tools running on it are as safe and effective as a physical medical device. It's a formal signal to every doctor, every hospital administrator that this is clinical-grade technology. And that was the barrier that big tech just couldn't seem to clear.
That clinical credibility is the key that unlocks the hospital door. But that door only stays open if the platform can save money. And this is all happening at the same time as that huge market shift away from fee-for-service
Right, where hospitals get paid for every single procedure they do.
and toward value-based care.
Exactly. Where providers are rewarded for good outcomes, like preventing hospitalizations in the first place, HSDP was basically the perfect tool for this new economic reality. Suddenly, hospitals had a financial incentive to invest in systems that kept patients out of the hospital.
But they need proof it actually worked.
They needed proof. And that's where the early pilots become so important.
Okay, let's start with the Radboud pilot. This was in the Netherlands back in 2014 with patients suffering from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. That's a disease known for these sudden, really dangerous flare-ups. So what was the setup?
So these patients were given home monitoring kits, wearable sensors, spirometers to measure lung function, ECG sensors, and all of it was continuously feeding data back to HealthSuite. But the breakthrough wasn't just collecting data, it was creating this intelligent feedback loop.
What did that look like in practice?
It was about blending the objective data with the patient's subjective experience. So the platform could flag an objective metric like a slow, steady drop in lung function over a couple of days, or maybe a sudden lack of activity.
Okay.
Then it combined that with what the patient was self-reporting through the eCare Companion app. How are you feeling this morning? And that combination allowed for truly personalized coaching and early intervention. A nurse could get an alert, call the patient, maybe adjust their medication.
And do all of that before it becomes an emergency room visit.
Precisely. And the sources also point out how open the platform was. The clinicians at Radboud actually developed their own app called Here Is My Data, right on top of HSDP.
Which proves it wasn't just a closed Philips ecosystem. It was a real development environment.
Absolutely. It showed the platform was flexible, but the most stunning proof of the value came from the US with the Banner Health pilot.
This was in 2015 in Arizona, and it focused on what they called super utilizers. That term alone sounds pretty intense.
It is. These are the small percentage of patients, often with multiple chronic conditions like heart failure and diabetes at the same time, who account for a huge disproportionate amount of healthcare costs. Banner Health put these high-risk patients on HSDP. This was the ultimate stress test. Could this platform actually bend the cost curve for the sickest, most expensive patients in the system?
And this is where the numbers get. Oh, they're just astonishing. After a year, the results for Banner must have been a financial revelation.
They were seismic. For this group, hospitalizations dropped by nearly half. They went from 11 admissions per 100 patients a month down to 5.5.
Wow.
Patients spent 50% fewer days in the hospital, and maybe the most critical number for a value-based system. The 30-day readmission rate, it plummeted by 75%.
75%.
From 20% down to just 5%.
A 75% drop in readmissions. Yeah. That fundamentally changes the entire financial model of a health system.
Exactly. And the money followed the clinical success. The overall cost of care for that cohort dropped by about 34%. And there's this great anecdote about a patient, Mary, a 68-year-old with heart failure. The system flagged a 3-pound weight gain overnight.
Which doesn't sound like much.
Right, but for a heart failure patient, that's often the very first sign of fluid retention and an impending crisis. The nurse saw the data, called her, adjusted her diuretic, and they avoided an ER visit that would have cost thousands of dollars.
The platform prevented the crisis. And that success, that led directly to Philips's business model changing. It wasn't just a pilot project with Banner anymore.
No, it became a 15-year strategic partnership in 2017, and this is the pivot. By signing a long-term managed services contract, Philips wasn't just selling monitors anymore, they were selling outcomes. They are now tied to the success of Banner's population health program.
From selling boxes to selling health as a service.
That's the whole transformation, and it validated the entire platform strategy.
So with the value proven, the next phase, from about 2016 to 2020, was all about scaling the tech, making HSDP this incredibly robust ecosystem. The partnership with AWS became even deeper.
Right. That enabled things like HealthSuite imaging, which migrated over 150 healthcare sites to cloud-based radiology. But the big focus here was on interoperability, solving what you might call the data integration problem.
Meaning getting data from non-Philips devices.
Exactly. It's one thing to connect your own devices, but hospitals are full of thousands of machines from dozens of different vendors. By 2021, HSDP had to integrate with over 100 types of medical devices and sensors.
Which sounds like a logistical nightmare, just getting everything to talk to each other securely inside a hospital.
It is the last mile problem of data. And that's why key acquisitions were so important. For example, they bought Capsule Technologies. Capsule's entire specialty was connecting to over 1,000 different types of devices inside the hospital walls, and then funneling that chaotic data stream into the structured environment of HealthSuite.
So they bought the solution to the last mile problem.
Pretty much. And they also partnered with IoT platforms like Samsung Arctic to expand their reach into wearables and other sensors.
And now, with all this data flowing in,
Mhm.
our sources say 145 billion medical images and data records. That's an absolute mountain of clinical data. It became the perfect training ground for AI.
It's a gold mine for AI, and they leverage the cloud's power to run advanced algorithms. So, take image processing. By using cloud environments like Amazon SageMaker, AI running on HealthSuite could reconstruct MRI images 10 times faster.
10 times faster. What does that mean for a hospital?
It means processing time drops to about 40 seconds, so a hospital can scan more patients, which increases throughput and efficiency. It also cut their own machine learning development cycles by 80% so they could innovate faster.
And looking forward, that AI integration is going even deeper, right? Trying to tackle huge industry problems like physician burnout.
Precisely. The next step is integrating generative AI directly into workflows. Imagine a radiologist dictating their findings in just normal conversational language. And the AI instantly generates a perfect, structured, compliant medical report. That takes a huge, tedious documentation burden off the physician's shoulders. That's moving beyond just data collection into true workflow optimization. And you can also see how their earlier acquisition of Wellcentive in 2016 fits in here. That brought sophisticated population health analytics to the platform, letting them manage data for over 30 million patients to find at-risk groups.
The strategy was clearly working.
Yeah.
But then nothing accelerates technology adoption like a global crisis.
Right.
The pandemic in 2020, it changed everything.
It was a massive, massive catalyst. Remote care went from a niche to an absolute necessity almost overnight.
And Philips was ready for that moment.
They were. They were able to rapidly deploy a remote screening solution in the Netherlands. It was based on an existing HSDP platform for patient-reported outcomes.
How quickly did they get that running?
Almost immediately. It was a quick adaptation. Patients with COVID symptoms would just fill out an online questionnaire from home. An algorithm on HSDP would assign a risk score, and then high-risk patients got an immediate follow-up call from a professional for triage.
So it kept people who weren't seriously ill out of the overwhelmed clinics.
Exactly. It prevented unnecessary visits and let the care teams focus on the most urgent cases. It was a perfect demonstration of the platform's agility under extreme pressure.
And the lasting impact of COVID, of course, was that the policy finally caught up with the technology.
Yeah.
Governments and insurers like Medicare started pushing through reimbursement for telehealth.
Absolutely. The pandemic made virtual care and remote monitoring an indispensable part of healthcare delivery. And that validation showed up on the bottom line, and it changed how Wall Street saw Philips.
Let's talk about that financial transformation. The proof is really in their revenue mix, isn't it?
It is. By 2024, get this, approximately 40% of Philips's health tech revenues were from predictable, recurring sources.
So software licenses, services, subscriptions.
Yes, and that is the clearest validation possible. That shift from volatile, one-off equipment sales to steady, recurring revenue is incredibly attractive to investors. It confirmed that Philips is now valued as a health tech solutions company, not just a manufacturer. And they doubled down on that with the $2.8 billion acquisition of BioTelemetry in 2021, a leader in remote cardiac monitoring.
So let's bring it up to today, 2025. HSDP is now this unified global platform. It's managing data from millions of patients, handling everything from remote heart monitoring to cloud radiology.
That's right. The fundamental challenge that HSDP solved, it wasn't really technological. It was about connection and coordination. It connected all these different devices. It connected caregivers to patients in their homes. It connected hospital data to real-time individual data. Philips' success is now measured not just in sales, but in outcomes, that lives improve metric.
Which leaves us with a really compelling thought for you to consider. The next frontier for a platform like HSDP is moving fully into predictive health and precision medicine.
Integrating things like genomic data.
We've already seen that HSDP can predict a COPD flare-up or a heart failure crisis days before it happens. So if a platform can already anticipate and prevent a health crisis before you even feel the symptoms, how does that change the very definition of being healthy? When care becomes truly proactive, not just reactive, what does personalized medicine look like when your own continuous stream of personal data is the single most important diagnostic tool? Consider the implications when we move beyond just treating sickness and into accurately predicting health.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of our Digital Civilization Exchange podcast. We hope the insights sparked new ideas, challenged assumptions, and brought clarity to the evolving world of service and digital-driven business models. This podcast is grounded in extensive research across various fields, drawing on years of academic work, case studies, and cutting-edge publications. It also shaped by hands-on experience of our collaboration partners, whose real-world challenges and successes help us to translate theory into practice. If you enjoyed the episode, consider following the podcast and sharing it with colleagues who are navigating the civilization journey. Your support helps us continuing bridging high-quality research-based and practice-proven perspectives straight to your ears. Thank you for tuning in and see you in the next episode.